Now let's talk about some situations you may encounter that deal with more complex information and referral issues. Sometimes in your work or partnership with the ADRC, you may receive a call from a person with dementia or from a caregiver that requires more than just information and resources. In this section, we'll discuss three categories of situations that warrant special attention. The first is possible abuse. The second is a person who's lost or missing. And the third deals with challenges due to behavioral expressions. First, let's spend some time talking about the role of Adult Protective Services, or APS, and when it may be appropriate to involve APS. These are the basic categories of abuse that APS deals with. Take a moment and think of an example of each type of abuse. When a person has dementia, he or she may have limited capacity. In other words, the person may be unable to understand or to communicate his or her wishes about how to handle a situation. In these cases, the person may receive an intervention without capacity. Although some decisions may be made by APS on behalf of the person, APS always tries to allow for as much autonomy as possible and to provide the least restrictive alternative that most benefits the person. When a person cannot inform APS about his or her wishes, a substitute judgment may be appropriate. In this case, APS speaks with others, such as family, friends, clergy, doctors, etc., to try and determine the person's history and wishes. Here's a brief list of situations in which you would want to involve APS. Of course, there are other situations you could add to this list, but these are some of the most common. Sometimes it may not be clear whether a situation rises to the level of abuse, but if you think it could be abuse, always refer the situation to an APS screener and let the screener make the determination. Here's the number to report abuse or possible abuse: 1-855-503-SAFE. This number will put you in touch with an APS screener. If you encounter an issue that arises that's clearly not abuse but still seems unacceptable, offer resources that may help alleviate the problem. Try to arrange for options counseling and/or speak with your supervisor for assistance about how to best handle the situation. Here are some examples that don't require APS intervention but should be dealt with. A home care worker who signs a voucher for hours that he or she did not work. Showing up late to work once in a while. If the caregiver and the consumer both agreeably swear or cuss. A worker keeps the change from a purchase the first time. Not doing the laundry right. Family squabbles. People can learn more about reporting abuse by visiting the ADRC website. Here's the page. Wandering is one of the most common and potentially hazardous issues related to dementia. Think for a moment about what it might feel like to live in a world that doesn't completely make sense anymore, if you don't recognize the place you live or the people around you. In this case, you might try to leave or find a place that's familiar with people you know and trust. Or maybe you feel like you're late to meet someone and that person doesn't know where you are, so you need to try and find them. These are just a couple of reasons why people with dementia may wander. It's important to prepare for the possibility that a person with dementia will wander and may become lost. If a caregiver contacts the ADRC and expresses concern about a person wandering, but the person is not currently lost, refer the caller to the Alzheimer's Association's website to learn more about the Medic Alert Safe Return program, and encourage the caller to pursue joining the program. This program provides 24-hour nationwide emergency response service for individuals with Alzheimer's or related dementia who wander or have a medical emergency. If a caregiver contacts the ADRC while the person is lost, advise the caller to call 911 immediately and to alert the 911 operator that the person has or may have dementia and is likely to be confused. Here is the Alzheimer's Association Medic Alert Safe Return website, where people can find more information. You'll also notice that the helpline is listed up here as well. In some cases, a family member or other care partner will call the ADRC looking for information and assistance with responding to behavioral expressions that can be challenging. Chances are you've already received inquiries from caregivers who have questions about behaviors. As you respond to these questions, please think back to our discussion from Module 2, and remember that behaviors are the way people with dementia communicate their unmet needs. The actions and behaviors of a person with dementia are that person's way of communicating. And every behavior is a form of communication, and every behavior has meaning. You can help caregivers to realize that understanding and meeting the person's needs is the best way of responding to behavioral challenges, and that by doing so, they will also improve the person's quality of life, and probably their own too. When a caregiver contacts you seeking assistance about a particular behavior, there are several things you can do. First, ask some simple questions to try to determine what assistance the caregiver may need right away, as well as on an ongoing basis, in order to safely care for the person with dementia. Number 2, recommend resources that may be helpful, both for the person with dementia and for the caregiver. It's important to ask some immediate questions to determine the level of danger the caller or person may be in by asking these questions. Are you in immediate danger? Is the person you're calling about in immediate danger? Do you feel like you need assistance right away to stay safe or keep the person safe? If the level of danger is high, call 911 and alert the operator to the fact that the person may have dementia, and immediately report the situation to your supervisor. If the level of danger is not immediate, proceed to asking some fact-finding questions. Of course, without meeting and getting to know a person and his or her care partners and living situation, it's hard to offer advice about how to deal with a specific behavior. However, there are some questions you can ask to help determine the kind of resources and assistance that may be most beneficial for the caregiver and the person with dementia. Here are some general fact-finding questions about the behavior that can help the caregiver problem solve, such as, what does the behavior look like when it happens? Or can you describe the behavior to me? Can you think of anything that might be causing the behavior, such as sights, smells, tastes, or sounds? Is there anything you've found that helps lessen or prevent the behavior? Has the person been diagnosed with frontotemporal dementia or another condition that may cause or aggravate the behavior? Have you found anything that lessens the behavior? Is there a certain time of day when the behavior usually happens? And is there anything the person does or says before the behavior begins that gives you a warning that it's about to occur? Sometimes just talking through the behavior can help the caregiver realize triggers or warnings that the behavior is about to begin. Answering these questions might also help caregivers see a pattern to the behavior and a way of intervening to meet the person's need before the behavior occurs. Talking with the caregiver about some of the specifics of the behavior also gives you a chance to gently educate caregivers about how behaviors are a person's way of communicating unmet needs. It's also very important to ask the caregiver some questions about how the behavior is affecting his or her ability to care for the person, or to determine what supports the caregiver may need and whether he or she can continue to care for the person with dementia safely under the current circumstances. Some of these ongoing assistance questions include, what is your biggest challenge in taking care of the person with dementia? What is the hardest thing for you to deal with? What is a typical day like for you? Does anyone help you? What do people do to help you? What do you do to take care of yourself? Can you leave the person with dementia alone for more than 1 hour safely? If the family reports a diagnosis of dementia, ask, have you received any information about dementia or Alzheimer's disease? Listening to the caregiver describe and discuss the behavior in concern in more detail gives you a chance to gauge how seriously the behavior is affecting the caregiver's ability to care for the person and how immediate the need for assistance may be. After speaking with the caregiver and asking the questions recommended above, you'll likely find that the situation falls into one of three basic categories and requires one of three courses of action. First, neither the person nor the caregiver is in danger. However, both could benefit from resources, information, and assistance. In these cases, provide information that is helpful according to their specific needs and determine whether options counseling may be beneficial. Note your course of action in the ADRC call system. Number 2, the person with dementia may be in some danger if certain issues are not dealt with. Provide as much information and as many resources as possible, and suggest specific plans of action. If you suspect abuse, contact APS right away. Note your course of action in the ADRC call system and alert your supervisor if an APS call is warranted. Finally, in the unlikely situation that the caregiver or the person with dementia is in immediate danger, call 911. Note your course of action in the ADRC call system and alert your supervisor immediately. No matter what, stay calm. Try to get the person to give you a call back or to give you a family member's contact information. Try to learn as much as possible about the person and the situation. Listen for signs of dementia. Offer assistance and resources if the person will accept them. Know when to refer for options counseling. And know when to involve APS.